It is 7 p.m. and I do see all managers. President Ziegler.
Hello, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District. We're meeting remotely due to concerns and caution over COVID. Because we're meeting remotely, we need to have roll call attendance, I believe. Mr. Smith, can you take care of that?
Yes. Calling the roll call for attendance, Manager Crafton.
Present.
Manager Duval.
Present.
Manager Cook.
I have a point of order question first, if I may.
Manager Cook.
My question is whether or not a notice of this meeting was mailed out 8 days in advance.
President Ziegler, managers, no. A notice was not mailed out 8 days in advance.
On that basis, I have to object to holding this meeting as we're not in compliance with the statutes. So you can record me as you deem fit.
Mr. Smith, can we continue with the roll call?
Yes. Manager Cook.
Well, reserving my objection, then I will say I'm present.
Okay. Manager Pedersen.
Present.
President Ziegler.
Present.
All managers present.
Okay, we have a relatively short agenda. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have any motions on this item?
I'd like to move that we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments or questions on the agenda?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
well, I have an issue with the agenda, but I have a couple of questions to ask, regarding this agenda. It seems to me that ask the question is, in order to have this, we have to have a valid plan amendment, correct? Whoever wants that. In order to borrow money, am I correct?
Administrator Jeffrey, can you answer that, or Mr. Smith?
We already have ordered the project at previous meetings and approved the plan amendment. Mr. Smith, if you have something else to add to that?
Nothing else to add.
Thank you.
So
Manager Cook?
yes, I can just continue, please, on that basis. And I just wanted to confirm, there wasn't a 60-day review period, only a 30-day review period provided with respect to the plan amendment. Is that correct?
President Ziegler, managers, yes, that is correct. 30 days is as required for a minor plan amendment.
And yeah, the question is, in the comment section, there were a number of comments, and part of those comments was an email, I believe, from you, Administrator Jeffrey, to various people. And did that email contain the notice of the review period? So with that was accurate? That's what you sent out? That was the notice for the review period? Okay, okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. Now, if I understand it correctly, the plan amendment, for assuming for these purposes it was properly approved, provides basically that the district intends to certify the cost of the project, enter into cooperative financing agreement with Hennepin County, whereby the cost of the project will be paid over 20 years through the district's ad valorem tax levy on all properties in the district in Hennepin County and Carver County. I think that's an accurate reading of what was in the plan. Let me know if you disagree. So, assuming that that's correct, am I correct that, so tonight we're looking at approving a temporary financing?
President Ziegler?
It's on a temporary basis?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, yes. We're looking at issuing a 1-year temporary general obligation bond to carry us through to when Hennepin County can issue long-term bond in fall of 24.
Okay, so it's a 1 year versus what we have in the plan amendment. What's for 20-year financing by Hennepin. This person who's going to be buying the bonds, lending us the money, is not Hennepin County, correct?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, could you repeat that, please?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes I have a talking too fast. Apologize. So it's a proposal here is for the district to borrow, issue a bond, but that's borrowing. Okay, this amount of money from this company out in West Virginia, or at least I believe their registered place of business is in West Virginia. We are not borrowing from Hennepin County at this time. So that I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right.
President Ziegler, Manager
So
Cook, we are not borrowing from Hennepin County at this time. That is correct.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I was doing that. And again, this financing, as discussed, though, we're looking at borrowing the entire, was it $5.8 million is being proposed? Is that correct?
President Ziegler, Managers, that is correct.
Okay, I just want to get my arms around this, and I kind of raised this question before. So this exceeds $2 million, and I believe there's provisions in 103D that limit borrowings by counties and financial institutions to $2 million. So does that apply? Does that statute apply?
President Ziegler,
Mr.
Manager, I would like to defer to Mr. Smith on that.
President Ziegler and managers, the answer to the question is that the $2 million loan limit does not apply. The district has separate authority to issue bonded debt. And it is the opinion of bond counsel and my opinion that the $2 million loan limit from counties or other financial institutions is not applicable.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, and I'll stop there. But okay on that basis. But I just don't get. I mean, they're both two statutes. They're both in there. One doesn't say, nil the other. So can't you have bonding and still have a limit? Are the two irreconcilable? Are can not both be able to bond and borrow, still be limited to $2 million?
Mr. President,
Yes.
Manager Cook, there are just two independent authorities. One provides for the district to issue bonded debt. The other provides for the district to obtain loans, and it imposes a limit on loans from counties and financial institutions. And it is the opinion of bond counsel and my opinion that those are two separate authorities.
And is this all being conveyed to the purchaser of the bonds or the bond debt?
That is my understanding.
Well, I have a hard time reconciling the two when you look at the statutes, especially 103Bs goes and they go into very much detail about this is when 103D doesn't apply, etc. And I don't see any provision in there that says, well, one doesn't apply, to the other. And it seems to me having both are applicable. And my general understanding was, the legislature doesn't stick in language for no good reason. So I have concerns that by agreeing to this bond, the district is going to be exceeding the $2 million loan limit, whether it be from this borrower, because when I looked this borrower up, or this borrower, not borrower, I'm sorry, lender up, basically they're listed as a financial institution in some great detail in the West Virginia, Secretary of State's office, and obviously the county is accounted. So I have issues, even if this was a legitimate meeting, whether or not we could authorize borrowing more than the cap set forth in there. So I guess I'll say respectfully disagree that one kind of trumps the other. I find that hard to believe. And also, so we're looking at switching all the way from a 20-year financing that we said in the proposed plan amendment. Now we're switching to a short-term financing, and am I correct? We never addressed short-term financing in the plan amendment.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I guess the one question I have about the order here is that the motion before the board is the approval of the agenda. And I'm certainly available to answer questions, but this seems to go to item 4.
Well, I think the issue is whether or not this should be on the agenda at all, given the questions that I have. So it is a matter of whether it is rightfully on the agenda, given the fact that, I think that a fair reading of the plan amendment is talking about long-term permanent financing, not short-term financing. And therefore, I think the position has to be, you need to do another plan amendment to allow for short-term financing. And I think it's pretty clear there's a big difference between short-term financing and 20-year bond financing, like buying a house and renting a house. So, but to direct your questions, I mean, we're talking about the agenda, whether or not these should be on the agenda. And my view is because it's not covered by the plan amendment. It shouldn't be on the agenda, and we shouldn't be addressing it, even if this was a properly, called meeting. And I haven't received an adequate, response on this issue. I apologize. I'm having a little stomach, whatever. I probably ate too fast, on that regard. So I think, we should be terminating this and getting opinion as to, whether or not this is, materially different. And, there are 2 different plan amendment provisions. And this was obviously not contemplated when that plan amendment was drafted, so we should not be addressing this borrowing. And let me just, I think that's what I have on those. Oh, I have 2 further questions, or this should be on the agenda, because my understanding is we don't have this covered by the budget. We have some number in there for payments, but we actually do not have a budget line item for this acquisition, either in 2023 or 2024.
President Ziegler, managers, we actually do with the plan amendment. We have a line item now. When that plan amendment was released, the capital schedule was updated to show this as a line item in the capital project.
Mr. President, I continue, but our budget is still the same and has not been changed. Is that correct?
The budget for this year is still the same. That is correct. The budget for next year with the plan amendment will include that line item, which will move funds from opportunity project into that line item to cover the debt service.
If I may continue, well, I don't think how that works. That's how that works on that basis. So I believe there's a problem with buying this in either 2023 or 2024, because making those purchases would obviously added to the budgets that we do have would clearly exceed those budgets on that basis. Let's see here.
So I'd like to call the question. I think we've talked about the
Excuse me,
agenda long enough.
A point of
Will I
order,
call the
Mr.
question
President,
without
you're
a vote on
interrupting me.
calling the
That
question?
is not correct. But if you want to make those statements on the record in a recording, you know, go right ahead. My
I just
last
did.
comment is I want to incorporate all my prior comments regarding this plan and the amendments for the record.
So, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on calling the question?
Mr. President, the order would be for a motion to close debate. And a
Okay.
second and then a vote.
I'd like to make a motion to close debate on the agenda.
A second.
Point of order.
Manager Cook?
You cannot, well, somebody has the floor. You cannot close the debate. You have to wait until the person has surrendered the floor.
Okay, so is there, let me see, should we just vote to close the debate? Mr. Smith, is that appropriate?
I guess the one question I have, it sounded like Manager Cook was near the end of his comments on the agenda. Maybe
But
if he
all of
was,
his comments regard other items on the agenda. I don't understand the reason for jumping ahead and discussing everything on the agenda before approving the agenda. That seems to be out of order to me.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
as I said, the question is whether or not these are on the agenda and can even be on the agenda, because we're talking about a material change in the financing from what was stated in the plan amendment. And my understanding is if it's not in the plan, you can't do it. Temporary financing is not in the plan. That is the reason I wanted to address it at this point.
So,
Mr. President,
yes, Mr. Smith.
it's the opinion of council that temporary financing is included within and authorized by the plan amendment.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
is Mr. Smith and his firm willing to put that in a legal opinion?
Mr. President, in fact, I believe we have. But yes, that is part of the process if we get to that later on the agenda.
Oh, excuse me, Mr.
Manager
President.
Cook, how much longer do you want to debate the agenda?
Well, I guess my point is if I haven't seen an opinion, I'm sorry, you know, there's not a written opinion. I can't put much weight in it. And this is the whole point. Why are we addressing something that, you know, is likely, I think, to require a plan amendment? This is a wholesale change, okay, in the financing process. And, you know, the statutes are the statutes. They provide for plan amendments. You just can't willy-nilly wish something into the plan, no matter how hard you wish that was the case. So, so are we going to be able to see an opinion before we end up voting on these issues?
Mr. Smith, can you answer that question?
I don't think there'll be a written opinion other than the opinions that have been provided all the way through this process for the last 6 months. And as a part of the bond issuance, there will be an opinion from bond counsel, as well as an opinion from the district's legal counsel, our firm, that the project is duly authorized and pursuant to an adopted plan amendment.
So, Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
I have one question. I will, I will be at an end. And the question is, give me an example under what circumstances would the limit on borrowing under 103D ever apply? Is there an example?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Smith.
the example would be if the district goes to either a financial institution or the county and enters into a loan agreement, that $2 million limit would apply, but that it's the opinion of bond counsel and our opinion that that is different than issuing bonded debt.
Well, but Mr. President, my last comment.
Manager Cook.
With all due respect, bond is nothing more than a debt and a borrowing. And I think you can go look up, any number of definitions, and I don't think that you will find that distinction. It's just a different means of borrowing as opposed to not being borrowing. So with that, I will yield.
Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on approval of the agenda?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving my prior objections, no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is to update of the Spring Road Conservation Project. Administrator Jeffrey, are you going to give that, or is there someone else?
President Ziegler, there isn't a tremendous amount of update to give other than the feasibility period ended on Monday. That starts the 30-day clock to close on the property or to put forward $50,000 to extend that period. We have title work in place, phase 1 ESA in place. So now it's just remaining to get the bonding done, financing done. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that, Mr. Smith?
No, I think the main update otherwise would be Mr. Jeffrey, is the 2 letters from Hennepin County, are they included in the meeting packet?
Would be in the meeting packet, yes. The letter of support from Commissioner Gattel and verify. Well, why don't you describe them right now while I look?
The district, I believe, maybe managers have received a copy of a letter from Hennepin County Commissioner Gattel expressing support for the project, and from the Finance Office of Hennepin County expressing its willingness to provide long-term financing for the project. And I think then the next order of business would be to hear from Mr. Eilertson with the background information on the financing.
President Ziegler, if I may quickly.
Yes.
Yes, those letters that Mr. Smith references begin, they're the last 2 documents in the full binder. So they're both in there.
Mr. Ellington, did I pronounce that correct?
Excuse me, Eilertson. Thank you, President Ziegler and Board of Managers. Would this be the appropriate time then to review the financing and the the bid that was received?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. And I believe you received a financing summary that details the bid that was received, actually, one short-term bid and two long-term bids that were received on financing. And just a little background, of course, you retained our firm Northland Securities to work on trying to identify potential bidders for this bond issue and then to report back at this meeting. And so what we did in the meantime is sent a bid term sheet along with financials of the watershed district out to a number of financial institutions, focusing on financial institutions that the district has an established relationship with already, those that you've had a past relationship with, and those financial institutions that have a history of purchasing municipal debt, in particular short-term municipal debt. So what we certainly a number of conversations, a lot of initial interest and good questions from financial institutions, which led to one bid from Huntington Bank on the short-term financing. When I was with you last, there was a request that we identify or at least seek input on would there be the opportunity to do long-term debt at this time as well. And so you'll see two bids from Capital One for a 20 and a 25-year term as well. So we focused on that 1-year financing with Huntington Bank, in particular because of your established relationship with Hennepin County and knowing that there's already an agreement for them to issue debt next fall. So the financing itself is a 1-year financing term. The date of the financing is December 27th of 2023. That's the date that funds will be available to the district. And then that's also 1 year later on December 27th of 2024 is when these bonds mature. The bonds have the ability to be refinanced or paid off early, beginning 6 months after the date of the bonds. So effective June 27th, 2024, and any date thereafter, the district can retire this short-term financing with the proceeds of long-term debt. And so the expectation there would be that the issuance of long-term debt, 20 years, 25 years, whatever length of financing you determine is appropriate, issued by Hennepin County would be the takeout financing for this financing. So going back a little bit to the Huntington Bank bid, they provided a bid of 5.17%. As I noted earlier, we certainly reached out to a number of additional financial institutions. That was the only institution that provided a bid on the short-term bonds. That's not, please don't read into that about the attractiveness, if you will, of your financing. It is a time of year where due to liquidity issues with banks that, it's a scenario where between Fed actions, Federal Reserve actions, and the tightening of the money supply, those were a couple of key reasons why we didn't get additional bids. We are pleased with certainly the bid from Huntington Bank at the 5.17%. It's interesting to note, board, that the short-term rate is higher than the longer-term rates. Please don't read into that. We actually have a unique market condition known as an inverted yield curve, where short-term rates are actually, in some cases, or often the case, are higher than longer-term rates. So the expectation is that the rate with Hennepin County next fall very possibly will be significantly lower than that short-term rate that we have here of 5.17%. So President Ziegler and members of the board, I can certainly address additional questions that you have, but that's a quick summary. Again, Huntington Bank, 5.17%, ability to exit this financing without penalty after 6 months.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
so do we have a summary or a table we can see the information?
Terry, is that able to be pulled up?
I can bring that up. It was sent out to all the managers Friday of last week. I'm bringing it up now. Sales summary.
The third page, Terry, would be the one perhaps to note. There you are, that page. As noted, President Ziegler and members of the board, this is the page that we call the tabulation of bids. It shows the low bid from Huntington Bank of 5.17 on the short-term debt, and then a rate from Capital One Bank for a 20-year term as well as a 25-year term.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
did we get any term sheets with more detail on these bids?
And those were also sent on Friday of last week.
But they're not posted to the website, right?
They're not at this time, no.
President Ziegler, members of the board, the term sheet that your administrator has up on the screen is somewhat standard format for what banks or financial institutions see on a bond issue like this. This, again, like we talked about, due to the time involved in trying to get the bond closed by the end of the year, is not a full public offering where we put together a what's called a bond official statement, but rather this is a financing where we put together a term sheet along with your financials and sent that around to the various financial institutions.
Do any managers have any other questions?
Well, I have a follow-up question. So
Manager Cook?
on these long-term bonds, were they is there ability to pay them off early?
President Ziegler, members of the board, short answer, yes. All three of the financing bids that were received have what's called a call provision, where you can exit the financing or call the bonds early. Typically on a longer term bond, it's about halfway through the financing term. As a side note, I'm certainly, it's nice to see that the 20 and 25-year bid from Capital One, but seeing the rates that they provided, 4.87 on 20 years and 4.9 on 25, as a comparison, if we were to look at AAA rated Hennepin County issuing general obligation bonds, they would be probably about a full percentage point or a little bit more lower than those interest rates. As well, the futures market indicates that the expectation is that rates are going to be trending lower into and throughout 2024. So I think you'll be in a good position come next fall to be converting this short-term bond to long-term debt and realizing a lower interest rate than you see certainly on the Capital One bids.
Mr. President, if I can continue.
Manager Cook?
So under these other offers, when was the call provision?
And I apologize, I don't have the Capital One call dates right in front of me here. But again, it was approximately halfway through the financing term. So 10 years on the 20-year and a little bit longer out on the 25.
And let me clarify, so we have no guarantee that we will be able to refinance these bonds with Hennepin County. Is that correct or not correct?
President Ziegler, Board of Managers, and perhaps I'm not the one to speak to that. I think it was brought up earlier that you have letters from Hennepin County. Perhaps Terry, I'll turn that back to you.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Yeah. They have provided a letter stating that they are in support of it, and that they intend to provide the financing, but as to a guarantee that the financing is provided, no. But they have provided a letter of intent to bond on our behalf up to $5.875 million.
And a follow-up, question to that is, well, was that the case? Well, first of all, that was the case. I mean, letter from commissioner, I'm not sure is particularly valuable, in that regard. And there's non-committal there. I mean, I have a question why one would want to, enter into purchase of this amount and with only 1 year financing. And yes, maybe you're refinancing it cheaper. I don't know. I don't know what the future brings. There's all kinds of trends that, may not come to fruition on that basis. Sure hope they do. But, we're impacted by the entire world, not just, our little bitty counties and watershed districts or state of Minnesota, for that matter. So I'm concerned, I've expressed that concern about doing short-term financing, and I think it would be better if this was going to be purchased, which I'm not advocating, that we enter into an agreement or amend the agreement to purchase to, delay the purchase until, Hennepin County has issued the bonds. It would save us some money and remove this uncertainty. And I don't think the sellers would be at a disadvantage, other than maybe they have a few months where they're maybe not making interest, but I think they're getting a windfall the way it is. So I'm not in favor of doing short-term financing.
Do any of the other managers have questions?
Mr. President,
Yes.
so a general, this is somewhat relates to this, but perhaps George, you can answer this. So the 1 year short-term financing has we can call it anytime after June 27th, and we pay just accrued interest through that point where we would refinance. And the way it stands right now, we're anticipating a September Hennepin County. So we have a 3-month window from the time, the early point we could call the bond and pay it off. So instead of September, we could do the long-term financing in July or August, potentially, if the circumstances are right. I guess the question that I have is, what in general happens if in March we were somehow able to close this early? Are the penalties severe for recalling the bond at that point? I'm just wondering what happens before the call provision, which you were talking about typically is halfway through the term of the loan. In this case, it happens to be July 27th, which is stated in their terms. So anytime after that, we pay the par value of the loan plus accrued interest through whatever the time period is. So if for some reason it was really favorable and we were all set to go in May, would that be prohibitive from the financing that we're looking at, the short-term financing?
President Ziegler, members of the board, certainly a good question. We've got the call provision on the short-term debt relates to when you can pay these off. Whether it be Hennepin County or the district issuing long-term debt, you could do that at a point earlier than that if conditions were such as you described, or the interest rates were favorable, or the county was ready to issue that debt earlier. You just can't pay these bonds off until the call date is reached.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep. Okay.
Mr. President,
And, well, first, are there any other managers that have questions?
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton?
So I'm very much in favor of going forward with this. I think due diligence has already been provided and all the legal paperwork is in place. So I very much support us doing this.
President Ziegler,
Manager Pedersen?
I concur with Manager Crafton. I'm ready to move forward.
Okay, Manager Cook? I think everybody else has spoken except for me.
who would you like to speak first?
I also concur with Manager Kraft.
Well, we don't have the motion to adopt this yet, do we?
No,
On the
we're
floor.
still in the discussion or the update.
I will defer until this comes before us.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item 4, which is adopting resolution 23-076, providing for issuance of a $5,804,000 general obligation temporary watershed bond. Do we have any motions on this item?
Mr. President, I move that we adopt resolution 23-076 for the issuance of the short-term temporary watershed bonds.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have questions or comments on this item?
Yes,
Sorry, I was muted. President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton?
the agenda I have in front of me says -071. Is that an error or has that been updated?
That's updated on the site. It's
Okay.
076, yeah.
Okay, all right, just checking. So are you ready for a motion?
It's been.
We have a
Very
motion and a second, I
Oh,
believe.
sorry,
It's,
yeah.
So we've
So,
got,
Mr. President,
we're open for questions and comments. Manager Cook?
Mr. President, well, first of all, I'm objecting to this financing for a number of reasons. I don't believe that the plan amendment was properly noticed, or was it properly reviewed or approved. Therefore, the plan does not provide for such an acquisition. Further, the plan does not provide for specifically for temporary financing. It only refers to 20-year bonds with Hennepin County, and I believe that requires at least at a minimum a minor plan amendment on that regard. Also, I note that using a minor plan amendment was contrary to our very own Appendix E, which deals with ordering projects, particularly capital improvement projects. And if applicable, that schematic specifically provides for 60-day review periods. So it believes me we didn't even follow our own requirements. Furthermore, I don't believe that this is as set forth in the proposed plan amendment. This constitutes an opportunity project. If you look at the definition, it doesn't involve an improvement. It is not a capital improvement. Acquisition of land property is not included in a capital improvement project, nor is such included in the definition of project under 103D. Furthermore, in my view, since it's not a capital improvement project, this project is going forward with the project required a unanimous vote because the amount involved exceeds $750,000. As I've already stated, in my view, we're subject to a borrowing cap of $2 million for borrowing from financial institutions and or counties, and this would exceed that. This borrowing this borrowing is not necessary. This amount of money, if the plan was correct, would be certified directly to the counties under the applicable statutes. I've already said, this acquisition would cause the budgets for 2023 and 2024 to be exceeded, which I believe violates provisions of Chapter 103D in particular. Importantly, to my knowledge, the district has not adopted any rules with respect to the acquisition of real property or the incurrence of debt, rules which are required under Chapter 103D. And therefore, it is inappropriate, illegal to borrow this money, and it's illegal to acquire this property. Please. And finally, this project has failed to follow the implementation process set forth in 103D, and even if 103B applied, did not follow that implementation process. So with that, I rest. Thank you.
Do any other managers have questions or comments? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Muted.
On adopting Resolution 23076, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving any of my prior objections, I vote no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
The next item on the agenda is to adopt Resolution 23-077, approving trust services agreement with Northland Trust. Do we have any motions on this item?
President Ziegler, I'd like to move that we adopt Resolution 23-077 about the trust services agreement with Northland.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on this motion?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
in light of the fact that I believe the plan amendment is flawed and not effective, that the ordering of the project was ineffective, the fact that the proposed borrowing exceeds the limits and requirements of 103D, this resolution is unnecessary and should be at a minimum tabled.
Do any of the other managers have questions or comments on this resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
On resolution 23077, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Without waiving any of my prior objections, no.
Manager Pedersen,
yes,
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, the only other item we have on the agenda is to adjourn. Is there any other discussion or anything else that we need to talk about? Administrator Jeffrey? Okay, I see your head shaking no.
Nope, that was the two items to address. Oh, thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Other.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
President Ziegler, I was just going to mention, thank you for the opportunity to work with you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Ziegler, I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving any of my prior objections, I'll vote yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks all. Take care.
thank
Hello.
you. Thanks to George.